Assessing someone who's undertaking an RPL is quite an involved activity. Main reason being, a lot of the times the assessment evidence isn't lined up easily with the unit of competency that you're trying to map it to. So a lot of the work actually relies on the assessor to carefully match the evidence provided with the unit of competency and/or other benchmarks. Generally what happens when someone asks to be assessed as an RPL candidate, they'll be sent out some sort of RPL application and guidelines that will let them know the sorts of evidence that they will need to supply to meet the validity of a particular unit or qualification. The candidate then goes about gathering that evidence. The hope is that they're organised enough to number it as requested by the RTO so that it's rather easy to then map that to the unit and/or qualification. So your role as the assessor, once the evidence is submitted, is to utilise the RPL assessment tool and map all the evidence to the tool itself. In that way, you'll get an idea if the assessment evidence is valid. The next part of your role is to go through the remainder of the rules of evidence. Firstly, is it authentic evidence? Because now you're receiving a number of different pieces of evidence, your job will require you to contact perhaps third-party RTOs, workplaces, and other third parties so that you can ensure the evidence that they provide is actually theirs. Another important point with RPL evidence is that it's current. And currency is very industry specific. So therefore you must be aware of what your industry requires to be current. It's fair to say that most industries will accept current evidence from between 2 to 5 years. The reason being, anything over 5 years, especially if the person has not been actually active in that work, can mean that their competency level has probably lapsed to some extent. Anything shorter, well, that can be good luck. However, some industries require a much shorter time span. IT and health are 2 examples of that. So just check with your industry stakeholders first. Once you've mapped all the evidence, you might find that there are a few gaps. You will need to go back to the candidate and ask for either additional evidence, or you may be able to do what's called a competency conversation. This is when you call the candidate. You may also email or Zoom or Microsoft Teams, etc., technology, and ask a series of questions that will satisfy you as the assessor that they are competent in those particular things you've asked. At that point, you'll have your assessment tool completed. You'll then have notes or some sort of record from the competency conversation, and then you're prepared to make your assessment decision.